Hi everyone. So this is a tutorial on basically creating a color selection menu for your vehicles and decal system too, and saving the color and the decal information so that when the player leaves the menu and goes into the game world, the decal's proper and the color is proper, and when they load the game up and close it, load it up again, the decal is the same. So basically, this is a little car geometry that I had for stand-in from a lot of my tutorials, and work with quads. So just wanted to show you how I made the decals for first off. So I just hit Control D to duplicate it, and then I'll isolate select just what I've duplicated. So just make sure you're only looking at the duplicate. And then go in and just keep the faces where you want your decal to be. And then what I do, at least in Maya, is I grab all the verts and I'm going to use the Move Normal tool, and then I'm going to move it on the in, which is the normal. And it basically creates, let me go into wireframe view, and it basically creates an overlay of geometry just over the surface. So that's what we have right there, and that would be our decal box. So really, let me just delete this, simpler explanation. There's a plane right there, and I just kind of laid it real close on the surface of the geometry of the car or object or whatever. The reason I just duplicated the whole car and did it was because it allowed me to kind of have a decal that wraps around with the body of the car, your character, whatever. When you have your decal made, just go Edit, Invert Selection, and basically delete everything but your decal, because you want to save this out as a separate scene. And I'm actually going to show you. I keep a file outside of the assets folder called source, and I'm going to just load up my decal object, and that's the decal object I'm using right there that fits right over my car. So just overlay geometry, basically. Okay? So I'm going to close out of Maya and show you the meat and potatoes inside of Unity. So here's our little scene, and you can see we have our car, and then I have some objects inside of it, decal 01, 02, 03, 04. And then if we pull the decal up, take a look at it, there it is, kind of hovering in space. Has a lot of alpha on it, so actually, like, if you know what your decals, where the graphics are going to be, delete a lot of these empty faces and all. You really don't want to have like blank transparency, especially for mobile or whatever. So in my project here, the decals are actually embedded in the car, so they travel with the car and stay with it and move with it. They're inside of the car hierarchy. By default, they should all pretty much be enabled, and you'll see them all overlaying each other, and those are all the different decal options, different textures for different ones. On each of the decal objects, you have cast shadows turned off, and you can also turn off receive shadows if you want, but basically you don't want your alpha boxes here to cast any shadows, so just make sure the decals are all not casting shadows inside of your car. I'm going to pull over Photoshop real quick. Let's see here, and I'm going to try to open up one of these decals. Let me find decal textures, okay, and I'll just show you how it's set up. So I put a gray background on it just so I can kind of see what I'm working on, because saving it as PNG with this transparent background, I can't see my UVs. So basically these are the UVs for the top of my car, and then these are for the sides. So this is, I'm putting the graphics inside of where the UVs are. Your UVs on your car will be different or whatever, but this is where you would swap out, and use your, the graphics you want to do. And that's one version. And then of course each decal, is a different texture or whatever. And there's the other one for baby logo or whatever. And of course when I'm saving it out in PNG format, I hide the UVs and I hide the gray background. Okay, so that's how the textures are created. Let me just show you the functionality inside of Unity now that we know how I created this decal geometry and how we set up and created the textures for each decal. We're going to go in Unity here and just see how it works. So I'm going to hit play, and I made the car kind of rotate. And I used Unity's GUI buttons just for the quickness of this tutorial. You don't want to use these on your mobile projects. Nope, you want to use your own in-GUI buttons or whatever, and use little graphics to represent the decal. So as you can see, when I click, let me let it rotate around again. When I click the button, it swaps the graphic. And if you take a look up here in, oops, I just accidentally parented something. Okay, let's try this again. Take a look up in here and you can see the highlighted decal and then the faded out decals. The faded out ones are disabled, so we're only seeing the currently selected ones. So as I go through, you'll see them switch. And that's the functionality here. You'll also see a little debug readout I made in the console that just shows you that you're picking the first decal, the second, the third. And then I made a little load game level button. It's like, let's get this car in game. So car's in game, it's driving, and it has our little cool branded logo. Now I can go back and we'll select like the monkey rule. We'll load the game level, and then we have our monkey rule number 4 car. Okay? And then the other part of this is not only can you swap the decals, but you can do your basic kind of color picker selector. And our console readout down here is also showing chosen color equals purple teal. And it's just, in case it wasn't working for you, you'll see that print out. And then so you can just go in and kind of, let me look. That actually looks kind of cool together. You got to put pink and purple in there for your other gamers that are a little more flashy, or feminine, or whatever. Okay, so that's basically the functionality of how it's happening. Let me move this aside, and we're going to go in, and I'm going to, actually I kind of want that there. So we're going to look in the project here. We have an animations folder. All this is the car rotating. You can have something else going on in your scene, but that's just a simple looping rotation on the car, so that's it. Car was just a model FBX I bought in that just represents a simple car geometry. The decal was the thing I opened up in Maya and showed you the decal. That's what this is. It's just a simple decal texture. You can just keep reusing the same one if the shape of your car body or your character or whatever doesn't change. You'll have different ones if you have a different car body. Decal textures are basically the decals that overlay the car. 1, 2, 3, and mine are 512, so we can go in here, group select them, and apply. And you can also set them to true color, or if you're worried about your memory or whatever, set them to compressed, the iOS compression, ETC or PVRTC, or one of those mobile forms. We have our, let me just slide that out of the way. We have our material folder. This is just the car body. I'll show you why this is pink later, whatever. It's kind of neat. Wheels in the car, we're not changing those. And then our decal materials. You do have to have a different material for each decal. Each decal will have a material, and I name the materials the same thing as a geometry so that you would know. And you have the appropriate texture mapped into that material. Simple ground texture, asphalt and bump and wet look. And then Lambert 2, I don't know what that is. We can just delete that. It doesn't belong in the scene. And then I saved menu scene, which is the menu, your game menu, where you have your color select or whatever, and then the world scene, which was just for us to test, where we see our car driving around and running around in the world. All the scripts, anti-roll bar already included with the car. I'm not going to explain it. I'm creating my drivable vehicle tutorial in Unity. It has all these same car scripts. We have a new, let me go back to the menu selection, and I created an object called delete all prefs, delete and disable when not using is a little note with it, and that's delete all player prefs. Disabled, we can continue to save our data. Look, I hit play again. Our last selected decal and our last selected car or whatever are there saved. But if we want to clear the saved data, we just enable these things, and then this thing becomes lit up. We hit play. You won't see anything happen. Turn off play. Disable it so it doesn't happen again. And then you'll see we actually defaulted back to the default blue, and we already had chosen Fatbox software logo. But so that's deleting the save data for testing, because sometimes you just want to go back to the original and test, but keep it disabled when you're not needing to disable save data. We have ground plane, we're not going to go into that. Camera, sunlight, which is just a directional light, and then the vehicle graphics manager, which is where we want to explain some things. So it's the vehicle graphics manager is create empty game object and always reset the position back to 0 it out, and then I just called it vehicle graphics manager, and then I dragged over the vehicle graphics manager script to it. Okay, and in the vehicle graphics manager script is chosen color, which is an integer in the script, which is using a player prefs value. You can look up player prefs by Googling it or whatever. It's pretty cool. It's the save data functionality in Unity. And basically the chosen colors are like blue is 0, red is 1, green is, let me open up the script too. That'll help. Okay, so it's represented by a number, and computers like to work and think in binary numbers or whatever. So yeah, there we go. Chosen color, it's a type of integer, and it's the integer for saving the number that represents a color. So to kind of explain that, we say it's called chosen color, the integer, and then down here when the game starts in the start function, we just have a lot of if cases. We're just asking, and we're saying, well, if that chosen color is equal to 0, then change texture to 0. And it also turns out that our textures, right here, texture 2D, this little thing here, is an array, which is basically just a long list. Here they are right here. And there's 9 of them. And you can set this too, like you could go 11 and then plug in more or whatever, more textures. And but I have 9. And basically they are the little swatches that, let's find the car material. They are the little swatches that get plugged in here in the texture thing. Okay, it just says blue swatch, there's green swatch, hot pink swatch. They're little 32 by 32 textures, so they are like let's see how big it is, 1.4 KB. So you're not even going to be able to get to in many different color textures you could think of, you probably wouldn't get over 100 KB, which is ridiculously small file size. So back in our vehicle graphics manager, that's the color, and the color is set by using these little color swatches or whatever here in the material. This is an iPhone reflection sphere mapped shader, so it has a color base RGB, and then it has the reflective where you see the reflection of the clouds or whatever in the car. So we're just changing out the base color of it, and it's basically changing the color of the paint just by swapping this and going, oh, let's go hot pink, and we've changed the paint color of the car. So that's what the script is doing. So we plugged all of them in, and so element 0 would be chosen color 0, which is the blue, okay, and element 1, because this is how it reads it out of the array, and all the way through to 8. So that's why in the script we're able to go, if chosen color is 0 in the array, it would be 0, then change texture to 0, which is saying grab the texture from 0 in the array or whatever. Yeah, it's a little slightly complex. And then save decal, it does the same thing. It's an integer that's saving player prefs data, and where were we? Okay, save decal. Yeah, so and our decals are 1, 2, 3, and 4. So a number represents each one of those. It's either when I hit start up here, we'll see the number probably switch. And no, we didn't set 1. So, we got to switch a decal. So there we go. Save decals 1, save decal 2, 3, 4. And that's the integer that's saving, so that when we go into the world and we can say, well, if save decal integer was 4, then load up this 4th logo in there. And there's all the textures for changing the paint. Now these are the button green, button blue, and they're different textures because my textures that are used to change the paint color, if you can't see, they're really faded out. They have a real heavy alpha on them because the alpha channel, actually, let me on the textures in the iPhone reflection shader, the alpha on the texture actually is what determines how reflective this car is. So there's a lot of alpha on it to make sure the reflection isn't like insanely intense. So for my buttons up here, we got a neat little blue button, red button, green button. We needed a different little texture that didn't have any alpha on it, and I could use it to fill in these buttons. Now you would probably you could use any other cool kind of texture, whatever, not even using Unity GUI buttons. You know, the world, sky is the limit for you. But I just use little swatches again, and the paint swatch is called green swatch, and the GUI button swatch is called green button, and it's also 1.4 KB. So don't sweat having, you know, all these little textures and all. They're very tiny and super fast to load and super fast to keep in memory. And basically, those little buttons fill in the GUI buttons there on here, and they're plugged in. Where are they plugged in here? Right here. These are the separate textures for the GUI buttons. They do not have alpha channel, and so you see like button texture green. So the onGUI function right here is what's creating all those buttons. All of this if GUI button stuff here. So as you can see when we look down here, we have a little thing on the back here of the GUI button that says button texture green, and that's just telling that GUI button right here to use whatever this is that's been plugged in right here, button texture green. So you can use your own and switch the script so you're not using onGUI or whatever, and use something else. I'd suggest nGUI. That software is awesome. That plugin. So there's all the button textures for all the possible different colors. Okay, and then this is where I plugged in the decals, and these are just game objects. And like I said, they're all embedded inside of the car hierarchy here. And then they're also plugged in into this manager here for them, and they're just game object slots here. Let's go back to the script and we'll look. And here they are right here. These are just the slots right here creating all the game objects and plugging them in. And then basically it's going to allow us to hook into each decal and then go right here in function start when the scene starts up. So it's not happening every frame and update. Kind of cached up front. This is where we set the active. True, false, false, false. So we're saying actually decal 1 by default, which is the first Fatbox software logo, will be the very first one enabled. All others will be disabled. So it turns off the game object and its renderer and all that stuff. So it's just really, technically, it's invisibly in the scene, but it's not really there. So in start we do that. And then we go down, and let me look through my own code here, and I gotta look through my own stuff here when I'm doing this tutorial. So we have our save decal. Okay. And then down here we have our GUI buttons. And this is the buttons that show the different logos and decals that can be overlaid. So this is the set of GUI buttons here at the bottom down here. And basically we're saying this is where you're getting your cool little console readout that says I chose decal 1, decal 2, that's the debug log. And this is the GUI buttons, and we're using decal button texture 01, which are where I plugged in these right here, which were I showed them to you earlier. They're the little logos and stuff that go inside of the buttons down here. That's where they plug in on the script, and that's where they're plugged in the GUI button right there. Okay, and then if you click that GUI button for decal button texture 01, which is the Fatbox software, it will say, all right, well, decal 01 is true, so it's active, and all the other ones are false and turned off, and so you only see the one decal. And then we go through each case saying, well, if you clicked a decal button texture 02 whatever here, that GUI button, then actually decal 2 is going to be true and all others false. Also here at the bottom we're setting that player pref variable up top. We have an integer up top called save decal integer 0. It's the integer for saving that decal that was chosen. So down here we're saying it's 1. And then we're setting it in player prefs right there. We're basically just saving that son of a gun. And down here we're saving it as 2. Save it in player prefs, setting it as 3, save it in player prefs, and so on and so on. And this down here, function change textures, is just going through that earlier array of all those little color swatches for the paint. And it's just going through all of them and It's making sure that you have all the textures plugged in for the length of the array. How we have 9, so we have 9 textures in there. And then this is where it's actually going in for vehicle O1. It's taking its renderer and the material that's on it that's also shared on the car in the world, and it's taking its main texture, and then it's going through the array and it's setting it in there to the color in the array that's proper. And that's this array right here. Okay. Now, vehicle O1 renderer is just because I only have one car in the scene. Of course, we would, if you were doing multiple cars, then we would do vehicle O2, another variable up there, and you would set these settings on a second car. So that's what's going on in the vehicle graphics manager. So we're saving color, we're saving a decal, and we've plugged in the mesh renderer. Okay, so for the color of the paint on the car, you do want to go, and I can't just like drag my whole car in because I don't want to change the color or texture of the wheels. So I just grabbed the one part of the body that I wanted to change the color on, and it has a mesh renderer right here on it, and that's what I dragged into the renderer for vehicle O1. So your car body or whatever has the paint on it that you want to change, drag into that slot. Okay. So there's all the paint textures, there's all the GUI button textures, there's the decal objects, and so that's how that's working. We're going to go into the world scene. Okay, we don't need to save it. Okay, and we have our car in there, and the car has the decal objects on it in here too. You have the same decals. Make sure you duplicate it in that same car, and the one that's instantiating in your world here where you're playing has all the decals inside where they're supposed to be too, because they're going to get turned on and off in the world scene too, and this is where it's really important. So on the car, you have another script called vehicle graphics, and this is the one that's going to grab all of those set player pref values. You can see all the decals are showing right now, but if I hit play, there's our saved stuff. It's loaded chosen color 2, saved decal 4, and basically kept our loaded in the player prefs values from the other menu scene. So okay, vehicle graphics, just it's using the same player prefs value, chosen color. It's going to set that integer and then turn that color on in the world. Plug in your mesh render for the car body here too. Save decal is going to turn on. When I hit play here, you're going to watch some of these go dull and some light. Decal 4 was the last one chosen. All the others are disabled. So when we take a look here, it's there. The others are null and gone. And then, oh, of course, in this one, it's kind of cool. In the vehicle selection menu, you can manually drag in, you manually pulled in decal O1 over there into the decals. But when you're instantiating the vehicle in game, you're not going to have a chance to be able to drag those decals into your car at runtime. So when we hit play on here, you see something neat occurring, which is they already all get plugged in kind of dynamically in the start function. This is not happening in update or anything like that. So in the vehicle graphics script, where that's happening is, okay, here we go. So I have all the integers for all those things we saw in the inspector. In the start function, we grab a couple of those player pref saves by using getInt. Before we were using setInt, which is setting the number, and this time we're getting it. And we're trying to get the color, the paint color, and we're trying to get the decal that was saved. Okay, so it grabs both of those. And then the next line was what I was just talking about, our decals. It actually goes through the scene and seeks out decal 1, 2, 3, and 4, which are up here, the variables, and then it assigns them and says, go find decal 1 in the scene, decal 2. And mine happened to be, it has to be named identical to that for it to find it. And then it finds it, and then it plugs it in there, into those variables because it's found it. And then down here is just a long list of grabbing that player pref value for the paint and saying, well, if the paint number was, if the paint number was 0, plug in 0 texture in the array, so forth and so forth all the way down here. And also, hey, if save decal integer was 0, then set decal 1 to true, If it's save decal 1, set it to true. The 0 case is if there is no player pref value set yet. Nobody's chosen a color when they first boot up your game. Normally it would be 1, 2, 3, or 4. But by default it'll be 0. So you want to have that case in there. And we say, well, if no one's chosen a color or anything, or a decal by default, then let's set the first fat box logo decal true, And then so if they choose the first one, set it to 1. They choose 2, set it to 2, and so on and so forth. And then this is just the same thing down here that actually in the game is changing the texture from the array to make sure your paint updates in the game world too. And then down here is just one simple little GUI button for, hey, return. Excuse me, it's early in the morning. And this is just a little GUI button for returning back to the main menu. So one last time here, we'll give it a whirl. And the car drives around too, so go ahead and use the car scripts and all that. I'll go back to the menu. And I think I liked the hot pink with the baby logo. That's probably my favorite thing. So, and it's pretty cool. You go back and we turn the game off and hit play again, and then and we're already back in the game. We left in the game menu. And then there we go. It's saved, so it never, it doesn't revert back unless we want to use this. Go back to the menu scene. Unless we want to use this delete all player prefs data thing, then would delete all our saved data. So hopefully this kind of cleared up how I've set up this color picking and choosing functionality, and it'll help you work on your games. I actually did this through researching how to do paint changes and decal changes in my superkart racing game. So I came up with a system here that works, and it seems to be pretty optimal. So this is a system that I'm going to use in my own game, and I just want to share it with other people too. Share the knowledge. So hope everyone has a good day.